He didn't come to the woods for poetry. Not at first. Tom was young, restless, hungry for something he couldn't name. He wanted to be a tracker, the way boys imagine it. Sharp eyes, quick feet, the quiet power of someone who can follow a trail no one else can see. He thought tracking was a skill you collected, like a knife you sharpened. Then he met Stalking Wolf. The man didn't greet him with warmth or ceremony. He looked at Tom the way the forest looks at a stranger, without judgment, but with absolute clarity. "You want to be a tracker?" Stalking Wolf asked. Tom nodded too fast. "Then forget what you think a track is." It wasn't an insult. It was a doorway. Stalking Wolf led him off any obvious trail and into the kind of ground that tells the truth. No pavement, no neat paths, just leaf litter, damp soil, broken twigs, life pressed into earth. He knelt, touched the ground with 2 fingers, and said quietly, "A track is not a footprint." Tom frowned. "Then what is it?" Stalking Wolf didn't look up. "A track is a change." Tom didn't understand, not yet. They walked, and Stalking Wolf showed him what he called the ultimate track, not something you follow, but something you leave, the perfect way of moving through the world. "You walk like you're announcing yourself," Stalking Wolf said. "I'm being careful," Tom protested. "No," Stalking Wolf replied, "you're trying to look careful. That's different." Tom's jaw tightened. He was used to effort being praised. Here, effort was noise. Stalking Wolf stopped beside a patch of ground that looked ordinary. "Tell me what happened here." Tom scanned for the obvious: deer prints, boot marks, anything clear and dramatic. "I don't see anything," he admitted. Stalking Wolf nodded, as if that was the expected answer. "Then go and ask the mice." Tom blinked. "What?" Stalking Wolf didn't smile. "If you can't read the smallest story on the ground, you'll never read the big one." He explained it simply, the way you explain truth. The forest is never silent. The forest is never blank. If a fox crosses an opening at night, the deer react. If a hawk sweeps overhead, songbirds change their voices. If a human moves through, everything small shifts first: mice, insects, birds. The tiny lives write the first chapter of every event. "Big tracks are loud. Small tracks tell you the truth," Stalking Wolf said. Tom got down on his knees, then lower, until his face was close to the earth. At first he saw only debris, randomness, dirt and leaves. Then Stalking Wolf pointed with one finger. "There." Tom stared. A faint line in the dust, tiny prints like commas, a narrow path pressed through grass, a disturbed patch where something had darted and paused. A mouse. And suddenly it wasn't nothing. It was information. Tom felt a strange mix of awe and shame. Awe because the world was full of writing he'd never learned to read. Shame because he had walked through it like a blind man, claiming he could see. Stalking Wolf watched him struggle and didn't rescue him with easy answers. He let Tom fail, let him guess wrong, let him correct himself. "You want to be great," Stalking Wolf said at last. "Start by being small." That sentence landed hard. Tom realized his biggest problem wasn't lack of knowledge. It was his inner noise, his need to prove, to hurry, to conquer. Stalking Wolf made him stop, made him listen, not for a bear, not for danger, but for the forest's ordinary voice. At first, Tom heard only his own breathing. then wind, then far-off birds, then the subtle rhythm of life moving around them, reacting to their presence. "The forest is talking all the time," Stalking Wolf said. "You only hear it when you stop shouting inside." That was the real lesson of the first 2 chapters. The ultimate track wasn't a trick of feet, it was humility in motion. And "go and ask the mice" wasn't a cute phrase, it was a warning. If you can't read the smallest signs, you don't get to call yourself a tracker, because the truth of the wild doesn't announce itself. Stalking Wolf never introduced a lesson the way teachers do. He let the land do it. One morning, after hours of silent walking, the trees opened into a small clearing. It wasn't dramatic, no grand structure, just a modest cabin resting so naturally against the earth that it looked less built than grown. "Good medicine cabin," Stalking Wolf said quietly. Tom expected something mystical, rituals, symbols, a story. Instead, he stepped inside and found simplicity. A small fire pit, carefully placed tools, clean lines, no clutter, no excess. The air inside felt different, not magical, but settled. "Why good medicine?" Tom asked. Stalking Wolf sat down without answering. After a long silence, he said, "Because this is where you stop being sick." Tom frowned. "I'm not sick." "You are," Stalking Wolf replied calmly. "Sick with hurry, sick with noise, sick with needing to be something." The words stung because they felt true. In the cabin, there was nothing to perform, no one to impress, no task to accomplish. Stalking Wolf gave him only one instruction: sit. Tom waited for the rest of it. Nothing came. An hour passed, then another. At first, Tom's legs cramped, his thoughts raced. He felt useless, restless. His mind searched for activity. "We're not doing anything," he finally said. Stalking Wolf looked at him steadily. "We are removing what is not needed." In the quiet of Good Medicine Cabin, Tom began to notice the agitation inside himself, the constant need to act, to prove, to advance. The cabin didn't teach him tracking, it stripped him down. The forest outside moved as it always had, but inside the cabin, Tom confronted something harder than cold water or darkness. He confronted himself. And slowly, in that stillness, something softened. He began to see that clarity wasn't earned through effort alone. It required emptiness. When they left the cabin, the forest felt sharper, not because it had changed, but because he had. But the next lesson would not be quiet. They were moving across a stretch of damp ground when Stalking Wolf stopped abruptly. "Look carefully," he said. Tom saw nothing unusual, just leaf-covered earth. He stepped forward. The ground gave way. His leg plunged into cold, sucking mud up to the knee, then deeper. The more he struggled, the tighter it pulled. Panic hit fast. He tried to wrench himself free, and the mud swallowed him further. "Don't fight," Stalking Wolf said evenly. Tom's breath came sharp. "It's pulling me down." "You are pulling yourself down." Quick mud. Topka, deceptively firm on the surface, treacherous beneath. "Stop," Stalking Wolf commanded. "Freeze." Tom forced himself still. The mud stopped tightening. "Spread your weight. Move slowly. Feel for support." Every instinct screamed to yank his leg free, but he listened. He shifted his body carefully, using his hands to distribute pressure. Stalking Wolf extended a long branch, not to pull him out violently, but to give him balance. Tom moved inch by inch. He emerged covered in mud, shaking not from cold, but from the shock of how quickly control had vanished. "Why didn't you pull me out?" Tom asked, breath unsteady. "Because you needed to feel it," Stalking Wolf replied. "Quick mud does not kill with speed, it kills with panic.
Tom looked back at the ground that had nearly trapped him. The surface had looked solid. "That's the lesson," Stalking Wolf said. "Not everything that appears firm will hold you. If you rush, you sink." Quickmud wasn't about danger. It was about reaction. In Good Medicine Cabin, Tom had learned to sit still. In Quickmud, he learned why stillness matters. The forest was not cruel. It was honest. If you entered it with ego, you would struggle. If you entered it with attention, you could move. As they walked away, Tom understood something new. Tracking wasn't about mastering the land. It was about mastering response. Because the earth doesn't betray you. It simply reflects how you step.
When the temperature dropped, Stalking Wolf did not speak about preparation. He spoke about truth. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin cold." Tom assumed it meant an early start, maybe a longer hike. It meant the river. The water was clear and brutal. Steam rose faintly in the early morning air, but the surface carried the kind of cold that empties your lungs before you are ready. "Take off your shirt," Stalking Wolf said. Tom hesitated only a second. He stepped into the water. The shock was immediate. His breath fractured, muscles seized, every nerve screamed to retreat. "Breathe," Stalking Wolf said, calmly from the bank. Tom's body wanted to run. His mind shouted that this was pointless, dangerous, unnecessary. "You are fighting the wrong thing," Stalking Wolf said. "The cold is not your enemy. Your panic is." Tom forced himself to inhale slowly, then again. The cold did not disappear, but it stopped feeling like an attack. It became sensation. Minutes stretched longer than they should have. When he finally stepped out, he was shaking, but not broken. "Cold removes illusion," Stalking Wolf said. "In comfort, you pretend to be strong. In cold, you meet what is real." Cold training continued for weeks, standing barefoot on frosted ground, moving without excessive layers, sitting still while wind pressed through fabric. Tom noticed something unsettling. His body endured more than he expected. It was his mind that surrendered first. "I can't do this. It's too much. I'm not built for this." Each time the thought rose, Stalking Wolf would ask quietly, "Who is speaking?" Tom began to understand. Cold training wasn't about toughness. It was about identifying the voice that quits. He stopped trying to conquer discomfort and began observing it. The cold remained cold, but it no longer controlled him. If cold tested the body, the next lesson tested something deeper. "Tonight," Stalking Wolf said, "you crawl." Night fell thick and complete. No moon, no lantern, only a blackness so total that depth vanished. "Lie down," Stalking Wolf instructed. Tom lowered himself to the forest floor. "Move." Where? Through. Night crawl. Tom began sliding forward slowly, palms searching, knees brushing leaves and soil. Every small sound felt amplified. A twig snapping beneath him sounded like a gunshot in his ears. "You are loud," Stalking Wolf's voice came from somewhere in the dark. "I'm barely moving." "You are loud inside." Tom paused. He listened. At first he heard only his breathing, too fast, too tight. Then the forest began to separate itself. Wind moving higher in the canopy. Insects. A distant owl. Something small shifting in the underbrush. The dark wasn't empty. It was full. Tom adjusted. He stopped crawling mechanically and began moving with pauses, timed between gusts of wind, synchronized with natural sounds. He lowered his weight more evenly, slid instead of pushed. At one point he felt, rather than saw, that Stalking Wolf had moved. No sound, no warning, just presence. "You look with your eyes," Stalking Wolf whispered from somewhere nearby. Learn to see with awareness. Tom began noticing density in the darkness, shapes within blackness, slight differences in texture. The night did not become brighter. He became quieter. After what felt like hours, Stalking Wolf called him to stop. Tom lay on his back, staring into the branches overhead. He was no longer afraid of the dark. He understood it. Cold training had stripped him down physically. Night crawl stripped him down mentally. In cold, he faced discomfort without escape. In darkness, he faced uncertainty without control. And in both, he learned the same truth. Fear grows loud when you resist it. It becomes manageable when you meet it. Tracking wasn't about chasing animals. It was about moving through cold and darkness without losing center. Because if you cannot walk through winter, and if you cannot move through night, you cannot follow anything worth finding. The lesson did not begin with explanation. It began with a tree. They had been walking along an old game trail when Stalking Wolf stopped and angled his chin toward a tall, scarred trunk ahead. "Look carefully," he said. At first, Tom saw nothing unusual, just bark stripped in places, soil disturbed at the base. Then he noticed the ground. It was torn up, clawed, churned, stamped into chaos. The bark was shredded at shoulder height. Deep gouges raked the trunk in frantic patterns. "The dog tree," Stalking Wolf said. Tom stepped closer. The air felt tense, as if something had happened here that hadn't fully settled. "What is it?" Tom asked. "Fear," Stalking Wolf replied. He crouched and traced one of the gouges with his fingers. When hunting dogs lose control, when they scent something too big, too overwhelming, they panic, they circle, they bark, they tear at whatever is nearest, they attack the tree. Tom imagined it. Dogs barking wildly, claws ripping bark, energy exploding in every direction. "What scared them?" he asked. Stalking Wolf pointed to the edge of the clearing. There, almost invisible, lay a heavy print. Broad, deep, deliberate. Bear. "The bear walked through," Stalking Wolf said. "Calm, direct. It did not waste energy." Tom looked back at the torn tree. "The dogs created chaos," Stalking Wolf continued. "The bear did not." The lesson landed hard. "When you meet something bigger than you," Stalking Wolf said quietly, "you can observe it, or you can attack the nearest tree." Tom felt the sting of recognition. Cold water, night, quick mud. He had attacked trees before. He had fought the wrong thing. Fear is natural. Panic is chosen. They circled the tree in silence. The bear's track led on, steady and unhurried. Tom realized something important. The bear left a clear path. The dogs left confusion. Power with balance leaves clarity. Fear without control leaves scars. They moved on. But the forest shifted the following day. It was subtle at first. The morning felt too quiet. Birdsong was thin, the usual chatter of chickadees absent. Even the wind seemed to hesitate before entering the trees. Stalking Wolf raised a hand. "Omen," he said. Tom felt the word more than understood it. "What does it mean?" he whispered. "It means the forest knows something you don't." They stood still. Tom listened. Nothing. No small movements, no distant rustling. The silence pressed. Then Stalking Wolf pointed toward the ground near a patch of soft soil. There, barely visible, was a thin, dragging line. Tom leaned closer. Snake. Large. Fresh. The birds had known. The mice had known. The forest had adjusted long before Tom had even noticed the absence. "Omen is not magic," Stalking Wolf said. "It is awareness of change."
They did not pursue the snake. They adjusted their path, giving it space. As they walked, birds gradually returned. The forest exhaled. Tom felt the difference in his chest. Dogtree had shown him how fear erupts when you don't understand what you face. Omen showed him that danger rarely announces itself loudly. It begins with absence, a missing sound, a slight shift, a breath held too long. If you listen, Stalking Wolf said, you rarely need to fight. Tom understood something new. Tracking was not about confrontation. It was about recognition. The dogs reacted. The bear moved with purpose. The birds warned without panic. And the tracker's job was not to dominate the forest, but to read it before it ever had to raise its voice.
After the omen, Tom understood that silence meant something. But Stalking Wolf was not finished refining his senses. Today, he said, you learn from the smallest teachers. They stopped near a thicket alive with movement, tiny gray birds flitting branch to branch. Chickadee survival, Stalking Wolf said. Tom almost smiled. Birds again. But Stalking Wolf did not speak lightly. These birds survive winter, hawks, foxes, storms. They are small and they live. Tom watched the chickadees bounce and dart, their calls sharp and constant. At first, Stalking Wolf said, all you hear is noise. Listen again. Tom stood still. Gradually, the calls separated. There were soft conversational notes, and then sharper, urgent bursts. When a shadow passed overhead, the rhythm changed. When a squirrel climbed too close, the tone shifted but did not spike. They speak in levels, Stalking Wolf explained. Different calls for different threats. They know exactly what is happening around them. Tom realized the birds were not simply surviving randomly. They were aware, always. They do not pretend to be hawks, Stalking Wolf said. They do not try to be larger than they are. They use attention. The simplicity struck Tom hard. You think strength means size, Stalking Wolf continued, but survival belongs to awareness. Tom began to listen not just for alarm, but for pattern. The forest's pulse became clearer. He felt smaller, but not weaker. Chickadee survival was not about hiding, it was about belonging to the system of warning and response. If you listened closely enough, you were never truly alone. But that lesson had a shadow. Later that week, they followed a trail into a denser section of woods where rumors traveled faster than animals. People talk about something here, Tom said quietly. They call it the Jersey Devil. Stalking Wolf did not laugh. Fear gives names to what it does not understand, he said. They found signs of disturbance, branches broken carelessly, trash half buried, soil churned without purpose. The track they found was human, heavy, aggressive, wasteful. This is your devil, Stalking Wolf said. The man who moved through here did not track. He trampled. He shot without aim, cut without thought. He moved like he owned the forest, but left it wounded. Tom felt anger rise in him. Why doesn't someone stop him? Stalking Wolf's eyes hardened slightly. You are quick to fight the monster, but understand him first. They followed the man's path deeper. He left signs everywhere, discarded shells, broken saplings, scattered debris. He was loud. Not physically loud, but spiritually. Animals kill for balance, Stalking Wolf said. This man moves without balance. Tom saw it clearly now. The real danger in the woods was not a mythical beast. It was a human who had lost connection.
The Jersey Devil was not horns and wings. It was ego without awareness. "That is what happens," Stalking Wolf said quietly, "when a man stops listening. Chickadees survive because they remain small and attentive. The Jersey Devil becomes feared because he refuses to be part of the system. One lives within the forest, the other fights it." As they walked back toward familiar ground, Tom understood something unsettling. He carried both possibilities inside him. He could become attentive, like the birds, or reckless, like the man. The forest did not create monsters, it revealed them. And survival, true survival, required more than skill. It required humility.
By now, Tom could read tracks most people would step over without noticing. He could hear the shift in bird calls. He could feel the difference between firm ground and deception. But Stalking Wolf knew something important. Skill is dangerous if the ego survives. "Today," he said quietly, "you disappear. Invisible walking." They stood at the edge of an open stretch of forest. No thick brush, no easy cover. The light was clear, filtering through leaves in slow-moving patterns. "Walk to that tree," Stalking Wolf said, pointing to a trunk 30 yards away, "and do not disturb the forest." Tom moved carefully. Soft steps, bent knees, measured breath. "Stop," Stalking Wolf said, after only a few seconds. "You are trying to be invisible." Tom frowned. "Isn't that the point?" "No," Stalking Wolf replied. "The point is to not exist as a threat." That shifted something. Tom realized he was focused on mechanics, foot placement, sound control. But inside, he was still loud, still pushing. "Watch first," Stalking Wolf said. They stood in silence. Leaves swayed in a rhythm set by wind. Shadows shifted gradually. A squirrel darted, paused, then darted again. Nothing moved in straight lines. "Now," Stalking Wolf whispered. This time, Tom waited for the wind before stepping. He moved when branches moved, paused when birds paused. He let his body soften instead of tightening. Halfway across the clearing, he noticed something. A deer stood near the edge of the brush. It looked toward him and did not run. Tom's heart pounded, but his posture remained calm. He understood then. Invisibility is not about hiding. It is about removing aggression from your presence. "When you enter without demand," Stalking Wolf said quietly, "you are rarely challenged." Invisible walking was not camouflage, it was intention. But the next lesson would remove intention entirely. "Tomorrow," Stalking Wolf said, "you will be lost." Tom didn't like the sound of that. They walked deeper than usual the following day, far beyond familiar landmarks. Then, without warning, Stalking Wolf stopped. "Go," he said. "Go where?" "Anywhere." And he turned and disappeared into the trees.
At first, Tom felt confident. He could track, he could read terrain, he knew the angle of the sun. But the forest thickened, landmarks blurred, sounds echoed strangely. After an hour, he realized something he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't know where he was. The realization hit like cold water. His mind began scrambling for control. "I should know this. I can't fail here. I've trained too long for this." His breathing tightened. The forest did not respond. It simply continued. True lostness. Tom stopped walking. He remembered quick mud. He remembered dog tree. Panic deepens the trap. He sat down, closed his eyes, listened. Gradually, sound separated from noise. Birds,
wind direction, the faint slope of terrain beneath him. He opened his eyes and noticed details he had missed: slight moisture in the soil indicating proximity to water, a gentle incline suggesting ridge direction. Lostness was not about geography, it was about ego collapse. As long as he believed he must not be lost, he remained lost. When he accepted it, clarity returned. He moved slowly, reading broader patterns instead of searching desperately for a single sign. Eventually, he reached a familiar stream. Stalking Wolf was there. He had been watching. "You were afraid," Stalking Wolf said. "Yes." "Good." Tom frowned. "Good?" "Because if you are not afraid of being lost, you will never respect the forest." Tom understood. Invisible walking had taught him how to move without disturbing the world. True lostness taught him how to exist without control. One removes ego in motion. The other removes ego in uncertainty. A tracker who cannot disappear is loud. A tracker who cannot be lost is fragile. And Tom realized something quietly powerful. The forest does not care if you are skilled. It only responds to whether you are balanced.
And balance begins the moment you stop pretending you are in charge.
By the time winter tightened its grip again, Tom no longer startled at small sounds. He no longer rushed to prove he could read the ground. But Stalking Wolf knew there was one truth left to face. "Predator," he said one morning. The word hung heavy. Tom immediately imagined teeth, speed, attack. Stalking Wolf shook his head slightly. "You think of claws. That is not the lesson." They found the track before they found the feeling. Large, deep, clean. A mountain predator had passed through, strong, deliberate, unhurried. "Follow," Stalking Wolf said. They moved slowly along the trail. Tom noticed something different about this set of tracks. There was no wasted motion, no frantic zigzagging. The animal walked with purpose, paused only when needed, used wind direction to its advantage. "It does not move loudly," Stalking Wolf said. "It does not announce itself. It waits." Tom felt a subtle shift in the forest. The birds were not panicking, but they were alert. The air carried tension, not chaos. Predator energy is not rage, it is focus. Then Tom felt it. Not sight, not sound. Presence. Somewhere ahead, watching. His body tensed instinctively. "Do not run," Stalking Wolf said quietly, "and do not challenge." Tom held his ground. He understood now. A predator does not waste energy on noise. It measures. And if you react wildly, you appear weak. After several long moments, the unseen presence withdrew. A branch shifted faintly in the distance. The predator chose not to engage. Tom exhaled slowly. "You felt it," Stalking Wolf said. "Yes, that is awareness, not fear." Tom began to see the distinction. A predator kills for survival. It does not kill for ego. The real danger is not the predator. The real danger is imbalance. They left the territory respectfully. But winter does not last forever. Soon the snow began to soften. The hard white surface that once carried tracks cleanly turned heavy, wet, uncertain. "Thaw," Stalking Wolf said. The melt revealed everything winter had hidden. Old tracks reappeared. Broken branches buried beneath snow now lay exposed. Mistakes were visible again. Winter forgives. Thaw reveals. Tom noticed how different it felt to move now. Where snow once masked his steps, the soft ground captured them clearly. He could no longer pretend to move unseen. Every action left a mark. "This is honesty," Stalking Wolf said. Tom watched water drip from branches, watched soil darken and soften. Predator had taught him focused intention. Thaw taught him consequence. When the land is hard, you think your impact is small. When it softens, you see what you truly leave behind. Tom understood something deeper. A predator walks with purpose, but during thaw, even purpose leaves imprint. You cannot move through life without effect. The question is not whether you leave tracks. The question is whether those tracks reflect balance or destruction. Winter strength had built discipline. Thaw demanded integrity. As they walked through the softening earth, Tom looked at his own prints in the mud. Clear, unavoidable. He did not try to erase them. He simply chose where to step next. And that, he realized, was the real lesson.
The day Stalking Wolf brought him to the cliff, there was no introduction. They climbed in silence until the trees thinned and the land dropped away into vast wilderness, miles of forest, water, marsh, and horizon untouched by roads. Tom felt small standing there. "This," Stalking Wolf said quietly, "is what most people call the end of the world." Tom understood why. No signs, no safety nets, no noise of civilization, just space, raw and indifferent. "Why bring me here?" Tom asked. Stalking Wolf didn't answer immediately. He let the wind move between them. "Because this is where excuses end." The words settled deeper than the height. Out here, there was no one to blame, no structure to hide behind, no reputation to defend, only choice. "The end of the world is not geography," Stalking Wolf continued. "It is the edge of comfort, the place where you meet yourself without distraction." Tom stood at the edge and felt the quiet expand inside him. There was fear there, but also clarity. If he stepped wrong, no one would rescue him. If he acted carelessly, the land would not soften its response. The wilderness did not reward confidence, it responded to awareness. For the first time, Tom did not feel the urge to prove anything. He simply stood, and something inside him stopped reaching outward. The end of the world was not about danger, it was about stripping away illusion. When they descended, Stalking Wolf's tone shifted. "You have learned to track," he said. "You have learned to listen, but that is not enough." Tom waited. Guardian. The word carried weight. "A tracker reads the land," Stalking Wolf said. "A guardian protects balance." They walked through an area where careless campers had left damage, trash, cut saplings, careless fire scars. Tom felt anger rise. "This is wrong," he said. "Yes," Stalking Wolf replied calmly. "And what will you do?" Tom hesitated. Before, he would have blamed. Now he understood something more difficult. A guardian does not rage, he restores. They began repairing what they could, clearing debris, redirecting foot traffic, covering scars with care. Protection is not force, it is responsibility. Tom began to understand the shift. Learning skills had strengthened him. Becoming a guardian required restraint. It required choosing balance even when no one was watching. "Anyone can take from the land, few choose to serve it," Stalking Wolf said quietly. Tom thought of predators, thought of thaw, thought of his own tracks in soft mud. The end of the world had shown him how small he was. Guardian showed him how necessary he could be. Standing at the edge of wild land is powerful. Choosing to defend it, quietly, consistently, is greater. As they walked back toward camp, Tom no longer felt like someone trying to become something. He felt like someone who had been given responsibility. And responsibility, he realized, is heavier than skill, but it is also steadier. The world does not end at the edge of wilderness. It begins there for those willing to protect it.
Summer arrived without drama.
The forest softened, light lingered longer, food was abundant, movement felt easier, and that ease was the danger. "Thoreau summer," Stalking Wolf said one morning as they sat beside a quiet pond. Tom knew the name, Thoreau, the man who went to the woods to live deliberately. But Stalking Wolf did not bring up books. He brought up intention. "Many people come to the forest to escape," he said. "Few come to understand." The air was warm, the water still. It would have been easy to mistake comfort for mastery. Tom felt stronger now, balanced, less reactive, more aware. And beneath that awareness, something subtle returned. Confidence. Not loud, but present. Stalking Wolf watched him carefully. "Summer is pleasant," he said. "That is why it is dangerous." Tom didn't understand at first. There were no extreme conditions to test him, no freezing rivers, no night crawls through darkness, no predators pressing close, just long days and gentle lessons. They spent hours doing almost nothing, sitting by water, watching insects move across the surface, studying how wind shaped reflection. Deliberate living, Stalking Wolf said quietly, is not dramatic. Tom began noticing something inside himself, the quiet desire for challenge, for something intense. Summer revealed impatience in a different form. He wanted the next test, the next edge. Stalking Wolf shook his head slightly one afternoon. "You still chase." Tom stiffened. "I'm not chasing anything." "You are chasing progress." The words hit harder than cold water ever had. Summer was not about skill. It was about being content without proving growth. Thoreau summer stripped away drama. It forced Tom to live simply, without needing crisis to feel alive. He began to understand that mastery is quiet. It does not demand spectacle. When the first leaves began to turn, Stalking Wolf changed the rhythm again. "You are no longer a beginner, but you are not finished." Journeyman. The word carried transition. A journeyman is not an apprentice, but he is not a master either. He walks, often alone. Stalking Wolf began giving fewer instructions. Instead of pointing out every track, he would say, "Lead." Instead of correcting mistakes immediately, he let Tom feel the consequences. One afternoon, Stalking Wolf vanished. No sound, no signal. Tom stopped. The old flicker of anxiety surfaced, but it did not take control. He listened, read the terrain. Not just footprints, but wind shift, bird positioning, subtle tension in space. He found the direction, followed it carefully, and eventually saw Stalking Wolf seated calmly on a rock ahead. "You hesitated," Stalking Wolf said. "Yes." "Good." Tom smiled slightly. Hesitation used to feel like weakness. Now it felt like awareness. Journeyman was not about knowing everything. It was about trusting process without supervision. Stalking Wolf no longer needed to explain every lesson. Tom could see them unfolding. Summer had taught him steadiness without intensity. Journeyman demanded independence without arrogance. He understood now. A master does not create followers. He creates walkers. As the season shifted again, Tom no longer felt like someone trying to earn a title. He felt like someone continuing a path. There was no ceremony, no final declaration, just steps, measured, balanced, deliberate. And the forest, as always, watched without applause, which was exactly how it should be. Guardian showed him how necessary he could be. Standing at the edge of wild land is powerful. Choosing to defend it, quietly, consistently, is greater. As they walked back toward camp, Tom no longer felt like someone trying to become something. He felt like someone who had been given responsibility. And responsibility, he realized, is heavier than skill, but it is also steadier. The world does not end at the edge of wilderness. It begins there, for those willing to protect it.
The air had shifted again. Autumn carried weight. The forest felt denser, quieter, like something large moved beneath the surface of things. Stalking Wolf said only one word that morning: bear. Tom felt the old tightening in his chest, but it no longer ruled him. They followed a heavy trail through damp ground. The prints were massive, clean, intentional. "This one is not wandering," Stalking Wolf said. "He owns this space." They moved carefully, not stalking, simply aware. Then the wind shifted. Tom smelled it before he saw anything. Musky, deep. And then the bear stepped from behind a cluster of brush. Huge, alive with power. It did not roar, it did not charge. It stood, measured. Tom felt the primal weight of it, the understanding that this creature could end him in seconds. "Bear smacking," Stalking Wolf said quietly, though they did not move. Tom didn't understand the phrase. Then the bear rose slightly, testing air, testing space. Stalking Wolf stepped forward, not aggressively, but firmly. He made a sharp, grounded sound, not a scream, not panic, a declaration. The bear paused. Tom realized then, bear smacking was not about striking the animal. It was about meeting force without collapsing. You do not challenge recklessly. You do not flee blindly. You hold ground with balance. The bear lowered itself, turned, walked away. No drama, no dominance, just acknowledgement. Tom's breath returned slowly. "You felt his strength," Stalking Wolf said. "Yes, and you did not try to overpower it." Tom understood. True power does not need to attack. It stands. But the forest had another form of chaos to show him. Days later they heard barking in the distance, not organized, not controlled, uneven, sharp, nervous. "Outlaw dogs," Stalking Wolf said. They moved toward the sound and saw them, half-wild hunting dogs abandoned by careless owners. No structure, no leader. They circled uncertainly, energy scattered and unpredictable. Unlike the bear, their movement was frantic. "They are dangerous," Tom said quietly. "Yes," Stalking Wolf replied, "because they have lost center." One dog approached too quickly, teeth bared not from calculated threat, but confusion. Stalking Wolf did not panic. He shifted his posture, grounded, steady. He made a sharp command sound, not angry, authoritative. The dog hesitated. The pack faltered. There was no clear alpha among them, no balance, and that made them volatile. Tom felt it clearly now. The bear had been power with structure. These dogs were power without discipline. The dogs retreated slowly, unsure. Once they disappeared, Tom spoke. "They're worse than the bear." Stalking Wolf nodded. "A predator follows law. Outlaws follow impulse." The lesson settled deeply. Strength without balance is dangerous. Fear without leadership is chaotic. The bear did not need to prove itself. The dogs were constantly proving. Tom saw the reflection immediately. A human without awareness becomes like the outlaw dogs, loud, reactive, unstable. A human with centered strength becomes like the bear, measured, precise, grounded. As they walked back through quiet trees, Tom understood the final layer of the lesson. Courage is not aggression.
Power is not noise, and leadership begins within. The forest does not fear the strong. It fears the unbalanced. And Tom knew now, if he ever lost center, he would not resemble the bear. He would resemble the dogs. And that, more than any claw or tooth, was the real danger.
Winter returned quietly. Not with violence, but with clarity. The air sharpened, the forest simplified. Sound carried farther, movement meant more. Stalking Wolf had spoken less in recent weeks. He no longer corrected every detail. He no longer directed every step. One morning, before dawn fully broke, he said a single word. Search. Tom waited for direction. For what? He asked. Stalking Wolf looked at him steadily. That depends on you. They entered the forest without a visible trail to follow. No fresh predator sign, no missing animal, no clear disturbance. For the first time, Tom was not tracking something specific. He was tracking intention. At first, he searched the ground instinctively, looking for broken twigs, displaced soil, subtle prints. But nothing demanded attention. His mind began to push. There must be something. There has to be a purpose. The old urgency returned briefly, the need to find, to prove, to complete the assignment. Then he remembered Quickmud. He stopped, breathed. The forest did not rush. Why should he? Search was not about chasing a target. It was about entering a state. He widened his awareness. Bird patterns, wind direction, the way frost clung more heavily to shaded areas, the subtle downward slope of terrain guiding water flow. The forest wasn't hiding something dramatic. It was offering alignment. Tom began walking without forcing discovery, not wandering, listening. After some time, he noticed something small. A slight deviation in deer movement near a narrow clearing. Not alarm, not panic, just adjustment. He followed. The trail led toward a quiet stream where the water moved under thin ice. There were tracks there, fresh but calm. An ordinary animal passing through its ordinary life. Nothing heroic, nothing dangerous, just rhythm. Stalking Wolf appeared behind him silently. "What did you find?" he asked. Tom considered carefully. "I stopped looking for something big." Stalking Wolf nodded. "And?" "I found what was already there." Search was never about finding a dramatic answer. It was about removing the noise that blocks perception. The forest does not conceal truth. It waits for you to stop demanding spectacle. Tom understood now. Every lesson had led here. The ultimate track taught humility. The mice taught attention. Cold taught endurance. Night taught awareness. Predator taught focus. Guardian taught responsibility. Search taught surrender. When you stop hunting for proof, clarity appears naturally. Stalking Wolf studied him one last time. "You can walk alone now," he said quietly. There was no ceremony, no declaration of mastery, just acknowledgement. Search is never finished. It simply changes direction. Outward becomes inward. Tracking animals becomes tracking thought. Reading soil becomes reading intention. As Tom walked back through the winter trees, he felt no urgency, no need to conquer, only steady movement, balanced, deliberate, aware. And he finally understood. The search was never for the forest. It was for center. And center, once found, does not need to shout.